All right, welcome everybody. I assume you can hear the sound of my voice. If so, raise your hand. If not, I don't know what to do. Anybody? All right. And I don't see any hands up there. Anybody? There we go. Some people have raised their hands. Always makes me feel better. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Putting down people's hands. More people are joining us. All right. What I wanted to do today was talk about audio not working for me. Here, let me just stop this for a second. I think we have a quorum. All right. So what I wanted to do is talk about Can you guys hear me now? Let me just make sure we're all right. I think we've got all the audio issues. Those of you that are in my coaching, my EXP group, that sort of thing, should have access to something called a document library. And if you don't have access to a document library, rather than texting me right now and saying, hey, how come you didn't give me access to the document library, you could, first of all, go through your email and type in search for document library. And what generally happens when people do that is they find an email that says you've been given access to the document library, but it went to spam or I don't know, it never got clicked on. If you verify that you in fact do not have this, send me an email, which my assistant will read, and we'll make sure that you get access. Now, in that, there's a folder called the Buyer Consultation 2022. And what's sort of different is the people that are online today have PDF copies of some of the things I'm going to go through. However, in the document library are PowerPoint compatible documents that you could, customize, right? So why are we talking about this, right? Why not? And first of all, you ought to get in the habit of asking people if they know of anybody who's thinking about buying or selling a home. You should just get in that habit. And if somebody says, well, we are, would you be interested in information that could save you time and money? And sometimes people are going to say, we have a friend in the business. And I oftentimes say, wow, yeah, that's congratulations, by the way, in the kind of market we're in, you could use all the friends you can get to help you buy a home. And you can see I did that. However, if I knew of a home that met your needs and would save you money, would you like to know about it? And most people, by the way, will say yes. If you don't think that people won't dump their friends and buy a house with another agent, you haven't been in the business very long, right? Because all of us have stories of friends, sometimes good friends, sometimes old friends, sometimes girlfriends and boyfriends that have dumped us and used somebody else as their agent just because of the timing. We're like old fishermen in that we stand around a lot, old real estate agents, and we talk about the ones, that got away. We always, the ones that got away. All right. And so you might just ask a trial close. All right. Now, so some questions that you might ask, and I have a list of these that you could download, but these are just some general questions. What type of home are you looking for? How long have you been looking? Are you working with an agent yet? Now, and some of you may notice these are the same 8 questions I generally would ask at an open house. How soon are you looking to move? Have you looked at very many homes? By the way, if they say we're not working with an agent, but we've looked at 20 or 30 homes, how did they do that? Right? Were they breaking in and entering, crawling through the bathroom window? I don't know, right? But I don't know, how did they do that? Why haven't you bought one yet? Do you own? Are you renting? Have you determined the amount of loan that you could qualify for? These are just some examples. Now, where I'm going with this, I'm going to go through this fairly quickly so we can get into the actual consultation. What we're going with this is that you have to, the more people you show property to that you've never actually had an appointment with, the less happy you're going to be as a real estate agent, right? As I say here, don't show property to buyers you've not had an interview with. If you make exceptions, you're going to suffer. I'm just saying. And one of the mistakes I think that people make is when they're, by people I mean agents, is their focus on the how, the what, as opposed to the how. What are you looking for? What price range? What area? What number of bedrooms? What number of bathrooms? Rather than the how, which is how are you going about finding the property that you want? How? Because that's what we need to focus on. So what I'm talking about is you would like to list the buyer, right? That's the ultimate goal. And that we may spend too much of our time locating properties, but not enough time on the working relationship. Why? Because it's easier to show them properties, and asking them relationship questions is, some people find something that's, that they don't want to do. So you might want to work on creating the relationship, listing the buyer, and then helping them find the property. Get out of the business of finding properties, but get into the business of convincing buyers they need to work with you. That's the goal of this. So sample dialogues would be, what are you doing now to locate the right home for your family? Right now, if they're still looking, it hasn't worked out, right? Because they haven't found a home yet. The home they've been looking for may have been sold to somebody else without them having a chance at it. Would you like to make sure that doesn't happen again, right? And we're going to talk about more of the script. This is just some samples that I've had before. You might also ask them questions. Do you currently own or do you rent? Now, if they say they own a property now, you're going to want to know where it's located, and do you have it listed with a realtor right now? And are you going to have you had it appraised recently? Do you need to sell the home you have in order to buy another one? And if they say, yeah, we're going to need to sell that one too, this is called a listing appointment, right? And then you want to offer to give them an estimate of how much they're likely to net from the sale of their existing home. Right? That's what the offer is when somebody owns a property and they want to sell it so that they can buy. So the three sales that are really involved in this process is, first, you have to sell them on talking to you. Right? And then once you've got them talking to you, you have to show them some value in working with you. And if you can do that, then you can get a commitment, which could be done emotionally. You show them pictures of your children, right? And their orthodontist bills and things like that. And you tell them how bad you need the money and that you really need them to work with you. You could get a verbal commitment, and you could preferably get it in writing, which we're going to talk about this a little bit later, right? So when it comes to developing the relationship, this is what I see many agents do, right? Many agents say nothing, right? They don't want to bring it up, right? They don't want to ask, are you talking to other agents? Are you working with AJ? Or are you working with me exclusively? They don't even want to ask, because maybe they'll get no, and then that would, hurt their feelings. So they say nothing, and they just hope that the buyer isn't working with somebody else. And although that works sometimes that doesn't work. You could say to them, I would like to be your agent. I would like to interview. I would like to apply for the position of being your real estate agent. I'm your real estate agent, aren't I? right? And if they say, well, yeah, okay, some people, that's good enough, right? They've said you're the agent. A verbal commitment would be you explain that you're going to give them 100% of your time and effort in order to find them the home that they're looking for. And what you're asking for is that during that period of time that they agree to work with you exclusively. Now, if it's not working out and they find that we're not working well together, then we can, call it quits and part as friends. But while I'm working for you, I would like you to make a commitment to work with me exclusively. Would you be willing to do that? Right. And by the way, sometimes I've found if I say, well, how about 2 weeks? Give me a couple of weeks and we'll see how it goes. And if it's not working out at the end of the 2 weeks, we can go our other ways. And by the way, when they say, okay, we're willing to do that, you need to be specific. And by specific, I mean you need to say things like, now I assume, because one of the questions I would ask them is, how are you finding homes? And they're like Zillow and Redfin and Realtor.com. And I said, okay, great. What I want you to understand is that if you're looking at homes on your Zillow app, and you see a house that looks really good, right? You're really interested in it, and you're going to oftentimes see a picture and name and phone number of a real estate agent next to that listing in Zillow. What you need to know first is that is not the listing agent, right? That is not the listing agent. Many people think it's the listing agent. That's just an agent that was willing to bid on advertising space with Zillow. They don't know you. They don't know anything special about the property. They don't know any more than I do, right? And so what I'm asking you to do is to overcome the urge when you see a name and a picture next to a listing you're interested in, overcome the urge to click on it and talk to that agent. And instead do a screenshot maybe of the listing and text it to me. Right, and then I'm going to find out all that I can about the property. I'm going to be able to run comparables for you. I'm going to get any of the disclosures that are available. I'm going to find out what's going on from the listing agent. I'm willing to do all that, but I need you to understand that when you see a property on Redfin or Zillow or Realtor.com, instead of calling the agent that's connected to it, you're going to call me. Will you do that? Will you agree to that? Now, we all have stories like this, but somebody that I was working with, he had a friend that he had known for over 20 years, right? One of them was the best man at the other one's wedding, that sort of a thing. And they're both into motorcycles, and they would go on motorcycle trips together. And over a year, he had been showing the guy he got married to somebody that we all also knew. And over a year, he'd been showing them properties occasionally. And then one day the guy showed up at his house with a big grin and he says, guess what? I just bought a house. We bought a house. Isn't that wonderful? We just bought a house. And his friend was like, well, what do you mean you just bought a house? Why didn't you call me? Well, it was on Zillow and there was the picture and it said, if you want information, call. And so we called and they wrote up the offer and isn't that, they don't talk to each other anymore. They don't talk to each other anymore. And by the way, in that particular transaction, it was about $20,000 that went out the window. Now, my point, of course, would be, did you ever say these words to your buyer friend, right? Because they're not thinking about protecting us, right? That's not what they're thinking about. They don't care, right? They just want to get a house. And by the way, even getting them to make that verbal commitment isn't necessarily going to work all the time, but you have to say those words. Now, the written commitment could be just a performance guarantee. I have some samples. I don't know if I put them in the buyer. They see you as a helping friend, not as a real estate agent. Yeah, that may be true, Monica. They see us as a friend, not as an agent. You might have to convince them, but even if they know that you're an agent and they see you as an agent, people, I think I said this yesterday in the coaching thing, that many real estate sales are made because you're talking to the right person at the right time, at the time they're interested in making a decision. And so buyers, by the way, and this I know works the other way around, but one of my lines about buyers is it's like having a girlfriend or a boyfriend, in that if you don't keep them busy, they're going to start seeing other people. Right. And so if you've got somebody who you think is interested in buying, you want to keep them busy. So a performance guarantee, which is just say, hey, we're working together, isn't that cool? I have some samples. I don't think I put them, I'll share one later. There's a buyer broker, which is also known as a buyer representation agreement. There's an exclusive and a non-exclusive one, which I'm going to talk about maybe at the end, right? If that's okay with you. All right, maybe. So what else did I give you guys as a handout? One of them should be a PDF of something that looks like this. Now, one of the starting points is a list of places where you can find market statistics. In particular, see the one that's called a buyer's guide, right? Which I would be using. And I'm going to show you, I've updated and trimmed along the edges and things like that, my home buyer consultation, which I've given you a sample of, but I would be adding some of this information in it. In fact, just to give you an idea, I'm not going to click on all of the links, but one of the links that says all shareable reports, this particular link, gives us three things: the housing market overview, the home buyer's guide, and county market updates. Now, if we're looking at the housing market overview, what this allows us to do is to select the county, and it could be a city. Now, sometimes the buyer you're talking to knows they want to live in Fremont, they want to live in Culver City, they want to live in San Diego. Sometimes it's more of a county level. But if we wanted to know if this is, I just left it at Los Angeles, if we click on the link, this is what it's going to show us. And notice how this is laid out in a horizontal or landscape. And when what I would be doing in the home buyer guide is I would be, notice this is a PNG file, which is an image file. So that could be saved. You could just download this and you could import it into your presentation. Or if you're really lazy like me, what I usually do is I just do a screenshot and then copy that and paste it into the PowerPoint presentation. Now, one of the reasons, the presentation I have doesn't have these in it, but I would show you where we would put them in. One of the reasons we want this information is because when we get into the discussion with the buyer, we need to be able to explain to them what's actually going on in our market, right? For example, in Los Angeles, median days on market is 13. What does that mean if you're a buyer? You got to move fast. And the list to sales price ratio is 101.3, which means on average, people are getting 1.3% more than they listed it for. Now, what that would mean if you're a buyer is that if your maximum price is 800 and people are getting more than they're listing it for, then we might need to be looking at properties under that mark. And you'll notice over here, you can download it, right? And it's a PNG file. So if I were doing this for where I really am, which is in Santa Clara County, and I click on this, and even though it says PPT for PowerPoint, it's not, right? And you can say our median price is a little bit higher than Los Angeles County, like double. Anyhow, so I'm going to just click on this, and I'll leave it in the folder, right? The other thing that's on this list that I would use is what's called the home buyer guide. And what the home buyer guide is, again, it's good for a PowerPoint because it's horizontal. And just to make it a little bit more, I'm going to put in my general area. Come on. And what this does, and I include these things, by the way, in a buyer consultation, is it takes a long time to load. And what this does is it talks about interest rates. It talks about last year's interest rate, last month's interest rate, the current interest rate. It talks about percent down, 20% down, 3% down, right? So in other words, it gives you estimated payments. It talks about bedrooms, different levels, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, and it gives them a little bit of an idea. Right, so that's why I gave you these links, right? So that you already have them. Now, this is the steps of the buying process, right? 9 steps, right? I've got 6, and there's a bunch of different lists of those. But one of the things that would be good to do is to get your people to become pre-approved. Now, the way I would explain that is that, first of all, if you're not pre-approved, then it is unlikely that any seller is even going to look at your offer unless it's been on the market, the house, for a really long time. But one of the things to talk about in the presentation is if you're interested in buying a house that's been on the market over 100 days, then you can do what you want because nobody wants that house. But if something that is very desirable, priced right in a good area with good condition comes on the market, there's going to be competition. And one of the things is that most sellers aren't even going to look at your offer unless you have a letter from a real lender that says that you're pre-approved to get a loan. And the lender matters. I've, as a listing agent, had 3 offers. One of them was from an online lender. It actually had a cartoon on it, right? Pre-approval letter, obviously had been printed from the internet. The other one was the loan agent and the real estate agent representing the buyer were the same person. So the buyer's agent essentially was writing a pre-approval letter for their client. For some reason, I don't trust those. Don't know why, right? It's just a thing. And then the third one was from a 3-page pre-approval letter from a real lender, which would be a major bank or credit union. And I actually knew the loan agent. Right now, you understand if all 3 offers were for relatively the same amount of money, which one are we going to take? If we represent the seller, we're going to go with the one that's got a solid pre-approval letter. And so if you get pre-approved from a Rocket Mortgage or some of those places, you need to understand that most real estate agents hate them. And the reason they hate them is because they rarely close on time. They have terrible customer service. It's hard to get, impossible to get a hold of anybody. So you ought to get pre-approved, and you ought to get pre-approved by a bank or a credit union. That's just and I understand some of you are loan or mortgage agents. I can do it, I can do it, I can do it. Go ahead. But I'm just saying, sometimes that makes a difference, right? Whether or not it's a lender that is recognized. So that's, and by the way, if somebody won't do that, if they're like, no, I want to go look at homes and you got to show me houses. Now it's up to you, right? If you're not busy, go ahead and show them a home because they won't be able to buy one. They'll see one they like. Ooh, I really, really, really like it. And they won't be able to get it in time because, it takes a while to get really pre-approved. The other thing, so anyhow, that's one step. The other one is you should give them a home tour. Now, even if they, notice I say, or even if they're not pre-approved, I've showed homes to people that weren't pre-approved, right? Because they committed to getting pre-approved. And what a lot of this is about is establishing a relationship with people. And so if I'm not even willing to show them homes, and it sometimes creates a confrontation, which we don't necessarily need. If I show them property and I'm doing a good job and I'm explaining to them what's going on and they like the relationship, it's going to be a lot easier to get them to agree to work with me exclusively, right? I'd also notice I put here, it can prompt the buyer to make a move. If they see things they like, then they're much more likely to push through with the process. Some of you that are online have already had this experience where you had somebody that seemed reluctant, and then all of a sudden they found a house they wanted, and now they want to move really, 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 really quick, right? Then the first meeting, so I might go ahead and show them property. And by the way, I notice I haven't talked about signing a buyer broker agreement yet, not yet. And the reason is that it might be too soon. I have a buyer who wrote me and said, I'll contact you when I'm ready after my email campaign. Now, should I continue my email blitz, or I've given them a 1 month break? Continue emailing them properties for sale, right? Unless they tell you to stop. If somebody tells you stop emailing me, my suggestion would be to stop emailing them, right? Because, well, they've asked you to, right? You might, reach out to them. But if, how would you feel if you told me to stop emailing you and I just ignored it? I just kept sending you stuff, that might not work very well. So notice we haven't talked about signing a buyer broker agreement yet, even though I've already talked about getting them pre-approved, which means introducing them to lenders. I've already talked about showing them maybe even some homes. And now we're talking about meeting either at a coffee shop or via Zoom. By the way, sometimes it's easier with Zoom, particularly when it comes to sharing what's on your screen. I'm just saying. And even before I joined EXP, and by the way, I had resisted joining EXP for many, many years because I had a belief that I needed to have a physical office building where I went to and worked out of. I used to believe that. And then when COVID hit in 2020 and my business went up and not down, that's not just for working with agents, but working with buyers and working with sellers, it just went up, not down. And I realized when I was looking back on the last 5 years that most of the times when I met with clients, I did not meet them in the office. Like if it was a seller, I never met them in the office because we'd always go to their house. And if it was a buyer, if I met them at the office, it was more because it was convenient for me, not because it was convenient for them. And given people's work schedules and the fact that I would be working with buyers all over the Bay Area, and we have traffic right here, telling buyers that you have to drive across town at rush hour to meet me in my office, that stopped working a long time ago. So I would ask people, I would say to them, what's your religion? I know that sounds like a very personal question, but do you worship at Pete's, Starbucks, Phil's, or are you a member of some fringe group, right? And people would laugh and they would sometimes say Pete's or Starbucks, they'd say what they say. Now that I'll bet that they have one, right? I'll bet you have one near where you work or near where you live that you're used to going to. Why don't we meet there? Now, the virus is still around. Zoom may be safer. They may want to do Zoom, but I'm just saying, even if I'm not meeting them with Zoom, I was meeting people at coffee shops prior to meeting people rather than meeting people in the office. Some people, by the way, are very into their coffee shops. I had a couple from Google that I sold a house to, and one of their requirements was the house had to be walking distance to Pete's Coffee. I'm not kidding, it was a requirement. And after I showed them this house, they were like, this is great, this is exactly what we were looking for. And the husband said, where's Pete's? And I said, why don't we walk over and go through the contract? And they're grinning. And in fact, I have this idea, right? Maybe some of you have connections that could help me. See, many years ago, there was a company called School Scout. I think they've gone under. But they were trying to let people search for listings based upon school rankings, but I don't think they're really active. This was my idea, to create a program, like an app on the phone, and I was going to call it Coffee Scout. And the thing would be that potential buyers could search for homes based on the property proximity to their chosen coffee establishment. Right, you think this is crazy? Maybe it is, maybe it is. But I've had many buyers, they want to know where's Starbucks, where's Pete's, where's Phil's, where's their coffee shop. Anyhow, that was my, and then we would have to rank all the independent coffee shops and things like that. Anybody know any good venture capitalists? Let me know. I'm looking for funding, But so the idea, I digress, is you want to set up a time when you could meet with them, where you're going probably on Zoom, or you could go through what's going on. Many of you know I have a Calendly link. You can get one for free. You can even use Google appointment slots, but it doesn't work as well. Just saying, where people can make appointments to talk to you. That's what I do. When you meet with them, you might want to bring material, printed out, whatever, including any documents like that you want them to sign or things like that. Most of the time when I would bring it, it was for show and tell. When it comes time to signing anything, we would actually do that, electronically. And of course, you're going to be providing them advice. Now, what would help this is that if you spend time every week studying what's going on in the real estate market, tips for buying a home, all of that sort of stuff, it would just help, right? So that you had, maybe advice. Doing research on, now, one of the things that I promise when I'm working with a buyer is that if they're ready to make an offer, I'm going to do a market analysis. And in fact, if I were doing this in Zoom, and I know they're having a little bit of issues, if I was doing this in Zoom, I might be showing them an example of what it might look like, right? I'm not necessarily going to do that. Our PR is having some issues. That's nice, our PR. But I might show them an example of the kind of information I would give them. You're going to need to help them throughout the transaction process. I would recommend using a transaction coordinator. I have one. That many of you know, and doing something like a closing gift afterwards. That's just sort of a process. And there's different systems you could sign up for that would automatically send people information, and you might want to do it too. All right, so that was the overview. Let's talk about actually how to conduct the buyer presentation, and I'll go through a sample. First of all, I've given you a link to a questionnaire. These are similar questions to the one that was in the other handout, but if you're looking for, if you're looking for one, there you go. In the document library, I have a couple of them. And how about that? We want to find out why things are important to them and not just what they're looking for. You should tell people how long the presentation is going to take. Right. So if you tell people you want an hour, they may be reluctant to meet with you. One of the things I always find, because I give people choices, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, or an hour, a lot of people pick 15 minutes is how long they want to do it. Sometimes they have questions that take an hour, but you should be able to tell people this is only going to take 10 or 15 minutes. It should only take 10 or 15 to 20 minutes. It really should. You're going to want to build rapport. Now, what that means is asking them questions about themselves and what's going on and where do you work, and you don't want to overdo it, right? If you skip the rapport building phase and just go right to the junk, just on attack, you might come off as a bit too pushy. But you also don't want to overdo it, because sometimes chatting with them about where they were from and, oh, I used to live in that, we used to do that, and I was just, there's a story you won't believe when I was in high school, and that, they don't overdo it, right? You understand? But you want to build a little bit of rapport, asking them questions about themselves. I have lots of those. Now, when we're doing the presentation, a good presentation involves you asking more questions and listening than talking, right? I'm just saying. And so these are some questions that you might want to ask, right? These are just different questions, right? When is the best time of day and week to reach you? How do you prefer to be contacted? Why do you want to find a new home? Why are you looking now? What kind of monthly payment are you get the idea, right? And you could be taking notes. You could create a form and ask people to fill it out in advance. Some people don't want to do that, but some people do. Depends on whether or not they're engineers sometimes, right? And then you also could find out if they're experienced, if they ever bought a home before, that sort of thing. If you know another real estate agent, and this doesn't have to be done in person because, you know, there's still a virus and you might want to practice role playing with other agents, right? And of those of you that are on my team that are interested, there are other agents. You could pick somebody nearby if you wanted to, or you could pick somebody far away. I have people far away as well as nearby, so that you're not practicing with the, you know, enemy or that sort of thing. When you put together a packet and what you might want to do, you could share it with them. Now, some of the other information that I might include in the packet besides the presentation that I'm going to show you and some other handouts, which you have access to if you're in my coaching program or on my team, there are loan agents that have information about buying a property. You could include that. Would a title company have anything that you could share with the buyer about the escrow process and the title process and things? I think they all do. And so you could start putting together sort of all of that information. There's also, by the way, the environmental guide and an earthquake guide and some other guides and things like that. You could create a Google folder that has a whole bunch of the stuff and share it with people so that they could read it if they wanted to. Now, I was going to bring it over here. I carry with me when I go out on presentations a very small little, you know, case, and in it I have two things, which I guess I'm not going to hold up because they're a few feet away from me. One of them is a Chromebook tablet, which I can type like it's, you know, like a laptop, but it'll flip around and it's a complete tablet. It connects, obviously it needs a Wi-Fi, or my phone, which is set up for Wi-Fi. I also have a extension monitor that I can put in front of my tablet that will stand up and it plugs in. That requires a power source. But I also carry in my car, you know, an extension cord. And so I can be looking at the screen and I could show people the screen. Now, this is why a Zoom meeting is easier, because I can be talking to somebody and showing them my screen and without having to turn, you know, around a laptop or something like that. So the first question you should ask is, what type of home are they looking to buy? Describe what you're looking for. Describe your perfect home. Now, by the way, we're doing it not because we're going to be able to match it completely necessarily, but this is the easiest thing to start with to get an idea of, you know, what we're looking for and what it might cost. Mortgage payment and pricing discussions. Zillow has a mortgage calculator. There's lots of mortgage calculators. What I would prefer that they do is to discuss this with the loan agent in advance, right? It's one of my suggestions, but if they want to know what a typical payment would be, there's lots of mortgage calculators and you might want to talk about that. And then explain the search process, right? And I have a guide, and we're going to go through all that. Pull up homes and get on the same page. So I might actually show people properties, and I might even show what a CMA would look like. I use RPR because it's easy to do very quickly. And, you know, I would maybe even show them, once I had an idea of the price range and what they're looking for, I might say, look, here are some of the properties that fit that. And then there's the buyer representation agreement. I guess I missed it. For some reason, this sort of stuff bothers me. I don't know why, but it just does. All right. And so I don't necessarily push them to sign the buyer representation agreement at that appointment. Not necessarily, right? Sometimes especially if we haven't looked at properties and we haven't spent much time together, it might seem kind of soon, right? It might seem kind of soon. And agents, I work with a lot of new agents. I work with some used agents. And so what I oftentimes get is an agent will say, well, I'm going to be meeting with a buyer tomorrow. I'm going to be talking with the buyer tomorrow. Should I send them the buyer representation agreement to sign tonight? Should I do that? Now, I can understand why you would want them to sign the buyer representation agreement, but I don't know why they would want to necessarily at this point. You know, to me, this is sort of like you're going on a blind date. Would you send a prenup agreement for them to sign before you went on the date? Probably not. Yeah, I know we haven't met before, but I'm going to have my lawyer reach out to you, all right, just to cover, you know, some of the legal things in case it doesn't work out. You know, they might seem to be premature for you to ask him to sign things like that when you haven't even met in person, right? I'm just saying. Now, we all know why we want somebody to sign a buyer representation agreement, because they'll be locked in and they can't use another agent and they're going to have to buy with me. All right, I understand. But what you need to be able to do is to explain to them why they would want to sign a buyer representation agreement. You might want to be able to explain that. Right? And then we would schedule the tour. Now, one of the examples, let me see, did I open this up already? Buyer, home buyer guide, company. All right, how about this? So this is my current presentation. And what you would do, by the way, on all of my stuff that's in the document library, what you would want to do is you would go to File, and you could save it as a Google slide if you wanted to keep it, or you could download it. See up there's a download. Don't ask me for permission to be the editor of my documents, because what if everybody was editing the same documents? You understand, if I give you permission to edit this on the drive, then it edits it for everybody. So if you want to use it, you download it or you make a copy of it. If it's a Google Doc, make a copy. If it's a PowerPoint, just download it, right? And then you can edit it, right? And so this one, I just jump right in to what I think are the big, is it a PDF? It's a PowerPoint presentation. And the way you get an editable version is you are a member of my team, you're somebody that I'm mentoring, or somebody that's in my coaching program. If you want to know how do you get an editable version, or I take PayPal, I have a Stripe account, we could work something out. Right? But this is one of the value adds I give to people that are on my team in my coaching program. I'm sure wherever you're at, there's somebody who's providing material like this that you can easily edit. I'm sure that's true. So is now a good time to buy a home, or should I wait? Reach out to me if you want to talk more about it. So this is going right for the most common, concern. And so I have some material about this. And one of the main reasons, there's two reasons why you might want to buy now. Number one, interest rates are likely to rise. Really? Well, they've been calling for this for a long time. And Freddie Mac, which is a government-sponsored enterprise entity, has predicted that by the end of the first quarter, it'll be at 3.4, and then 3.5, and then 3.6, and then 3.7. That's their prediction. And that doesn't, so let me just do this. If you download it, it works better. Right. It just does. Okay, so slideshow. Oh, and by the way, the part about the market, right, what I would probably be doing here is I would put in a blank slide, and maybe even a second blank slide. And I would then insert a picture. And one of the pictures that I would insert, let's see if they, here's an example, right? See how nice that was? And if I didn't do it, Santa Clara County Buyer's Guide, I would download that. The reason I didn't put this in because obviously it would, you know, change over time, but I would be expecting that you guys would do this. How about that one? There we go, right? So I might talk about that first, about what's going on in the market. It's now a good time. Interest rates are rising. Projections. Should we worry? Be worried. So the ratio, if you haven't heard it, and if you've been in business very long, you probably have heard it, is that if interest rates go up 1 point, it lowers the purchasing power of a buyer by 10%. Some say as much as 12. Why is that true? And the answer is that lenders use ratios. So the ratio could be 45, let's say. What a 45 ratio means is that if a family is making $10,000 a month and the lender is using a 45 ratio, it means the debt to income ratio is that your maximum mortgage payment would be $4,500, 45% of whatever. I think I might want to make this a little bit of a different look. I don't know. Maybe it's easier to read. How about that? Easier to read. But you guys can fiddle with this too. So the ratio does, interest rates go up, ratio doesn't change. But in other words, you still are limited to a $4,500 a month mortgage payment. But because interest rates have gone up, the amount of that payment that goes to principal goes down, cutting your purchasing power. So for the mortgage payment that today would have bought you $1 million property, if interest rates go up 1 point, for the same mortgage payment, the same payment, you'd be buying a $900,000 property. You've lost $100,000 in equity because you waited because interest rates went up 1 point. You lost $100,000 in equity. Now, where we're at now is still very low interest rates, right? And you might want to know what the current rate is, but you can see that historically interest rates have been way, way higher than they are right now. And so is it possible that by next year we could be a point higher? It's possible. It's possible. So the bottom line is because there's inflation, interest rates are going up. If you buy a home while rates are locked in the mid threes, your mortgage payment will be locked in at that rate for the life of your loan. Right? Buying now is a great way to protect yourself from rising costs and future rate increases and securing your payment amount for the long term. As the senior economist for the National Association of Realtors said, if inflation continues to grow at the current pace, rates will move up faster in the following months. So one reason why you might want to buy now is because of the interest rates are still low, but going up. So what's going to happen with home prices? Are they going to go down? More like a, look, I might have an extra, I don't know. So I don't know how they got there. So are prices going to drop in 2022? They went up a lot in 2021, but in general, they're still going to be going up. Right? The National Association of Realtors thinks it's going to go up 5.7, and Realtor.com, who I thought was kind of connected to them, thinks it's only going to go up about 3%. There are a lot of differences of opinion, but there's no real credible source that in California in particular is predicting that prices are going to go down. Another getting right to it kind of a question is how can we compete when buying in a competitive market? And I've got 6 things, right, that you might want to do to compete. You should do your listing homework. For some reason, how about that? I'll say, for those of you that are my thing, I'll save the minor changes. The rest of you are going to, start from scratch. So you should get pre-approved. The more solid, because we're going to talk about contingencies, the more solid your financing is, the more competitive you're going to be. We compete on price, terms, or both. And one of the terms is, are you pre-approved for a loan? And is it solid such that we don't need a loan contingency? Is it? You also need to get the right agent, right? Somebody that understands what the competitive market is and is committed to helping you find the home that's going to be on it. A friend who's a part-time agent, not necessarily that serious about real estate, may not be a good one for you to use in a competitive market. You need to know what you're looking for so that when it shows up on the market, we look at it quickly. We don't wait for the open houses. We get there quickly, right? So you know what you're looking for. When it comes, we're going to get there fast. There's preemptive offers. There's ways for us to do that. And then be a nice buyer. Aren't we all nice buyers? So you want to do, if you're in contract and they don't have inspections, you get one right away. You might want to offer the seller a rent back, right? There's some strategies in how you could do that, but that's another term that you could play with. And then we're going to talk about contingencies. And by contingencies, which ones can we remove? So this is the home buying process. There's an initial consultation. That's what we're doing right now. You're going to get pre-approved for the loan. We're going to do searches. You're going to find the properties that are your favorites. You're going to look at a virtual tour first, and then we're going to go see the home. When you've found one that you wish to buy, we're going to sign all the documents electronically. Once we're in contract, the next step is to delivery of the earnest money deposit into escrow. Sometimes that has to be done by the next business day. That's a good thing to talk about because sometimes the money isn't that liquid. They're going to sell stocks. That's going to take at least 3 days. Then there may be inspections. It depends on whether or not they already have inspections, right? There's inspections and contingencies that are all tied up in that. When it's time to sign the loan documents, that's done by a mobile remote notary, right? We don't go into, offices and sign these things and then you get your home. So in finding the home, according to the survey by the National Association of Realtors, 52% of the buyers who found a home and bought a home did it themselves on the internet, but over 30% of the time, the agent found the home. Now, how is that true? First of all, we might be finding non-multiple listing service properties that aren't on Zillow. Right? There's also the possibility that we're better at finding things, right? Because if we really know what you're looking for and we can go preview it and make sure it's what you're looking for, we have the ability to help you find homes. So one of the reasons that some buyers don't think of is that you actually could help them find the home they want to buy. Because they're thinking, hey, I got Zillow, isn't that everything? Not necessarily. Now, Zillow may have new homes, but they don't always. Targeted off-market property sellers. In other words, if I know somebody wants a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home in a particular neighborhood within a price range, that I would offer to contact sellers that own those homes to see if they're interested in selling. Why wouldn't I do that, right? Somebody might want to sell their home. For sale by owners, distressed properties. These are other properties that we're going to look at and help you find. Now, by the way, when it comes to signing a agreement to work with me exclusively, if they want me to do this extra stuff, dig up homes that aren't necessarily on Zillow, where they might have an opportunity to buy it without competing against other buyers, they're going to have to agree to work with me exclusively, because I'm not going to go do all that just to find out, oh, they're working with another agent. So depending on where you are, either it is common in your area, like mine, for sellers to have a property inspection, a termite inspection, and a bunch of inspections, and do that in advance. And or in some areas, agents and sellers just don't do it, which I think is a mistake. So what I would point out to a buyer is if we're writing an offer on a property and they've already done all these inspections, what they being the seller is expecting is that you're going to have an offer that is not contingent on inspecting the property because they already have the inspections. So one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the inspection reports with you very carefully, see if there's anything we need to watch out for, if we need to get any estimates or bids or things like that. If they don't have inspections, in some ways that's better if you're a buyer. The downside is that if you want them, and you should want them, you're going to have to pay for them. But the upside is if there's anything that shows up, even if there's not much that shows up, you can renegotiate the price in the middle of the transaction. And that's because you have an inspection contingency, which is very, very broad. You can simply say, we've decided we don't like the house and we're not buying it anymore, which gives you an opportunity to renegotiate the price. So either they have inspections, in which case we'll look to make a non-contingent offer, or they don't have inspections, in which case they're not expecting a non-contingent offer, which gives us a contingency, which gives us a get out of escrow free card if we want it. And you get your money back. So again, I would go through what are the contingencies. Loan, the fewer contingencies you have, the more attractive your price is going to be. In Silicon Valley, where it's very common to have the prelim, the SBQ, the TDS, a property inspection, a termite inspection, a roof inspection, a pool inspection, and all of that, where it's very common to do all that, the sellers are selling to the highest non-contingent offer. So even if you have a higher offer with a price point, but you have an appraisal contingency, and I'm offering less than you without an appraisal contingency, I'm probably going to get it. Because unless the listing agent is 100% sure it's going to appraise. So if the appraisal contingency may be something you have to have and something you don't. If your client has extra money and they're serious about buying a home, then we should talk about whether or not they need the appraisal contingency. A loan agent sometimes can answer that question. They need a loan, they need an appraisal contingency. But if we can get you pre-approved, really pre-approved, so that we don't have to have a loan contingency, it's going to make your offer stronger and save you money. If they have a preliminary title report and we've read it and we can remove that contingency, if they have reports and we can remove the inspection contingency, then our offer will be stronger. In Silicon Valley, it's the buyer with the highest non-contingent offer who usually gets the purchase. So here's just a list of home buying services that I've put together. So these are all the different things that I'm going to do to help you, right, buy the home and get the most home, right? I'm asking that you work with me exclusively during this process. Then you have something that looks like that, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in, I've updated it just a teensy bit, but for those of you that are in my program, there it is. All right, and other things, so that's just an example, right, of one. Other things that I have put in here, what else? These are some guides, and again, this is a portrait as opposed to a landscape alternative type of a presentation. And here I wasn't going to do this, but I was going to take off the teams, right? But anyhow, You can delete them yourself. Again, this can be downloaded as a PowerPoint presentation. So if you're more interested in something that you could print out that looks like a booklet, I've given you that. I have for Monica and others, a Spanish version of it. There we go. That's the thing I went over today. This is the EXP template. That's the buyer questionnaire. Handouts. A millennial's guide to home ownership, which this is a PDF, but there's also, I believe, I'll put in, all that is a PDF. I don't have anything else. And I'm going to put in a couple of other things that I have, which are not there yet. This is a profile from 2020 of buyers and sellers. And I've also put together these are a bunch of pictures of buyers with little lines and things like that, if you're interested in, in doing that. I have a couple of other things that I was going to include. So I'll be adding those. I have a couple of other guides, like there's a winter buyer's guide, which apparently I haven't put in here yet, but I'm going to after I'm done. All right, how do you get those guides, etc., and handouts? So I've given you PDFs of what I did, and the rest of this, like this whole system, I'm a coach. I have a team at eXp Realty. I coach people that, by the way, are at Keller Williams and Intero and other places as well. If you're interested in getting access to the ones that you can just modify, the turnkey stuff, reach out to me. Reach out to me, and we could talk about that. Will you get the recording? The answer is yes. It'll probably be on my YouTube channel soon. Do we need to talk to our expired listings okay to show clients? An expired listing is not a listing, and it's not on the MLS. And you don't have to ask the previous listing agent, but you'd have to contact the owner of the property and ask them if they are still interested in selling it. And they might be, and they might not be. And if they are, then go ahead and sell it. If they're not, then you really can't. All right, thank you guys. You warned me out again. If you're interested in talking, I think in the chat, my assistant has put in enough information to get a hold of me. If you'd like to get access on how to have some of these things easily done for you, reach out to me. I'd love to talk to you about all that. Thank you, everybody. Talk to you later. Be safe out there, okay? Be safe out there. Bye, everybody.